Welcome to Wide Flank.
Okay, welcome to another Wide Flank. First off, just wanted to say thank you to everyone for the great feedback to the Ocarina of Time episode. Secondly, like to announce that the next Gameclub game is Majora's Mask. Dugan and I are kicking that off next week. We're finishing the Woodfall Temple and its aftermath. That'll be the first episode in that series. And thirdly, just, we're a small podcast, but we have a fun, active Discord. Everyone should join. That's where I'm pulling questions from. We have a Patreon, all that shit, all the stuff that normal podcasts say. Now that I'm through with that, today we're doing a Now Playing episode. We're combining two deck-building roguelike games into one episode. One is Slay the Spire, developed by Megacrit. The other is Balatro, I don't know how to say it, developed by Local Thunk. To discuss, I'm joined by Madeline. Hi, Madeline.
Hi.
And Teddy. Hi, Teddy.
Hello.
It's like a welcome back for Teddy.
I don't think there's a right way to say Balatro.
Yeah. Based on the episode of him on Eggplant, he's just a troll and wants people to mess it up all the time.
Yeah, I looked it up before I think I said it out loud to someone and was like, oh, that's definitely not how you say it. That sounds terrible. And then I looked it up and I was like, did that help? Like, do I look like with the pronunciation key? I don't know if I actually am saying it better now, but
well, it evokes Italian to me, so I feel like it's Balatro.
Balatro. Yeah, that's how we'll say it for the rest of it.
Yeah. I'll leave that to you, man. The poker game is what I'll say.
Yeah. So my first question for you guys, just off the bat, is just I was curious, like, what are your priors going into each game? Sort of like, what did you know about the games? What did you expect? What did you actually find when you kind of dove into each game? I don't know, Teddy, you want to start?
Yeah, I don't think I'd play. I don't even know if like deck builders were really a thing. Like I know there were a few, like, Dominion, I guess, is the most famous before Slay the Spire. But I hadn't played a single video game like that. And I think there were a few. But this was like the first big one, and I didn't really know anything about it. I think, I like roguelikes because of Spelunky, and then I just thought this game was fucking impossible. When I first started playing, I was like,
even
this
though
is
you
insane.
Famously beat it on your first try, right?
And Balatro, I thought it was a roguelike, but I thought it was going to be like weirder than it is. I thought like with like the Joker like talking to you and stuff. I think I was primed because we played Inscription recently, that like something else was going on in this game, but there isn't. Sad to report. So I didn't know anything. I just thought like, oh, it's a deck builder. I literally like, I feel like as little I knew about Slay the Spire, I feel like I basically knew, besides like, oh, I have played a deck builder before, I couldn't be prepared for what Balatro was.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I was shocked when you were playing Poker Hands in the first. Yeah, and I like watched gameplay videos, and like still I didn't know that you were going to be playing Poker Hands.
Yeah, totally. What about you, Mads?
I almost always go into every game blind. It's just somebody's like, you should play this, and I'm like, okay. So I feel like y'all have been playing Slay the Spire for like, or had played it like maybe a year and a half before I started playing it, and then all of a sudden I became obsessed because I could play it on my phone on the subway, which was really the entry point for me. My first impression was like, wow, this is ugly. But I came to love it. And for Balatro, I mean, the only reason I think I even heard of it was because you were like, we should try and combine it with Slay the Spire and do a deck builder app. And I was like, oh, okay. So I started playing it.
Yeah, that's a good enough reason. Yeah, you guys were the one who were like, let's do a Slay the Spire app. And I was like, yeah, let's combine it with this new game that apparently made $1 million immediately and sold 1 million copies. So, why not? Yeah, that kind of leads us into like Danny's question, and I think a lot of people's question was just, what is it about Balatro and Slay that makes a combined episode make sense? Because I think on paper, these are both the same genre, but do you guys actually think there's a lot of overlap in these games?
Other than the fact that they both have cards in them?
Yeah.
Not really.
I think there is. I mean, I think there is in broad strokes ways and strategic. I think there are in a lot of important ways it's similar. Like, is Half-Life similar to Doom in important ways? I think it is.
Yeah.
I do think they're worth like reviewing on their own merits and like talking about their differences. But I think like, I mean, this is a new genre relatively, and I think like talking about these things, because I've in some ways I'm like this. There's no reason to combine them. That's like a huge like new mistake. Be like, oh,
Sorry,
well, they both have
holy
cards because they both have cards. We're reviewing them. Like, oh, these games you both shoot guns in these games, so we should combine them. But I actually think like, because this isn't a well explored genre, it's pretty new. I think there are like a lot of overlaps. Like, well, I found like prepping. I was like, oh yeah, like you can compare and contrast a lot of different ways they handle initial cards and information given to the player, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was coming from. Also, I think that I forget who it was in our Discord was having trouble with a deck, or they weren't having trouble with a deck. They were having trouble just going flush every time in Balatro. They would just every run they were just jamming flushes and couldn't like see another strategy. And I realized by the help that I was giving them, that was sort of one of my eye-opening moments of like, actually, this is exactly what I would recommend someone do in Slay the Spire, which is just scrape by the early game. Like, for those who don't know what a deck builder is, it basically means you're starting with the most basic deck. So in Slay the Spire, that's just like attacks and defends, basically. And in Balatro, it's just a traditional 52 card deck. And then you're trying to scrape by the early game to gather resources and then make your deck more powerful over time. Eventually, like, it's almost a progression. It's like early game, I just want value cards. I just want to be able to win the fights that I think I'll have, barely. And then mid to late game, I'm trying to be like, okay, how can I scale so I can actually like beat bosses and get really powerful? And that is similar in both games. But at the same time, I just, while I was prepping for the episode, I was just like, I don't know, there's so many more, I feel like, decision points in Slay. And maybe it's just like a slower paced game or like a bigger game. But it's funny you mentioned Inscription, Teddy, because I have in one of my notes is like, Balatro almost sort of feels like a mini game in that way. It's just like, if this was Inscription, I would be like trapped inside the video poker machine by some evil person and I have to bust out or something by beating them. But like, no, you just play again. That's what the game is. You just play again.
Right. I mean, I think the thing that's the biggest difference for me is there's investment in the Slay the Spire characters for me. And like, there's not really much. I mean, I love to get attached to basically anything in a game. I'm like such a loot hoarder. I'm so greedy, but like I don't feel connected to the Jokers in any way. I'm like, you've outlived your usefulness. Goodbye. In a way that I don't necessarily feel that way about things in Slay the Spire.
Do you think that's pace, or do you think that's just like the world of the game? Because for me, the pace actually makes a huge difference. Like Balatro, like as soon as you go up a few stakes and you're on like basically a harder difficulty, and I just feel like I have no time. I'm like, I just need to find a multiplier immediately or I'm going to die next fight.
Right.
But Slay, even on Ascension 20, the hardest possible difficulty, I still feel like I'm like on an adventure, like crafting a deck, taking my time. And that, to me, that's a big difference on like how much I care. You know what I mean?
Totally. And because even on the higher ascensions, you start from still a pretty mellow place, I think that controls the pace a lot. I've been skipping a lot of blinds, which has been such a fun way to play.
Yeah.
It also really makes the game go fast.
It's sort of like a nice fuck you to the game.
Yeah.
Just
Like-
skip the blind, yeah.
Yeah, like I'm not playing that. I'm actually not going to play half your game.
Yeah.
Like
It was
Yeah.
funny listening to him on the Eggplant Pod. He mentioned that they asked him about skipping rounds because that's a thing that doesn't exist in roguelites or roguelikes. And he kind of was just like, well, in the end, you're playing the same number of rounds per minute, which I thought was like an interesting response to it. Like he's quantifying the player's fun and how many rounds per minute they're playing. So if they skip, he's like, yeah, whatever. Like you skip, you get a prize, you don't get the money, you don't get the shop, but you're still just playing. So who cares? Like he just wants people to play his game. Which I was like, yeah, I that makes sense.
yeah, like to think about it in the point of a run is
Yeah.
wrong, right? He's
Yeah.
like, yeah, no, it's just you're just sitting down
You're
in your
just
chair.
playing.
That's playing.
Yeah.
Should we talk about skipping blinds? I feel like that's like a really
It's interesting.
Yeah, so like the way Balatro works is it's each ante is split up into 3 blinds. And basically it's like an easy, medium, and boss. And easy, you have to get a certain score with a certain number of poker hands. Medium, you have to get a higher score. And then a boss, you have to do some weird modifier to your deck, which might be like you can't use any spade cards and you still have to get an even higher poker score. But rather than play each blind, you can just skip it and not play it. And not only that, but you get rewarded for not playing it.
You get like
the
loot.
next shop, everything costs $0,
Yeah.
or you double your money, or
Yeah.
And why wouldn't you do that every time? Do you guys want?
Well, I think if the reward is not something that would be useful to you at that moment, you might as well just take the money. Or if you want to test your builds.
But
before you get
also
to the
that's
boss.
kind of like the shop in Slay the Spire is also somewhere I frequent and a good way to, get your deck going and get rid of cards. But it's not necessary. But I feel like in Balatro, it's kind of how you scale. Like you need to, like in Slay the Spire, your only resource is like your health. But in Balatro, you really need like in my best runs at least, and I'm not a pro player or anything, but in my best runs, I have like money generating machine, and then eventually I can hit the shop and re-roll enough that I'm satisfied and buy everything that I want to satisfy to make a mid to late game scaling deck. So I feel like skipping, you can't just skip. Like you'll never get strong enough based on just the rewards, and most of the rewards, or at least like. Yeah, I think most of them are basically shop modifiers, right? It's like double your money, an extra voucher in the shop. The shop costs $0, so like you eventually need to go to the shop. I think once per ante is not enough. That's how
I got
take
a
it.
joker that was like I can't remember how many times the multiplier every time you skip a blind,
Oh yeah,
which was absolutely sick.
that's a really fun one. It's like, oh, this run's gonna take 4 minutes.
Yeah.
Teddy, what are you thinking about? You're deep in thought.
Yeah, no, I'm thinking so many things. Do you think it's like always good to skip like the first or second blinds if it's like a good reward? Because one thing I struggled with Balatro is that like the beginning game I found so luck based and like tedious and not in a way that I found Slay the Spire.
I was going to say, you could be also describing the first few rounds as Slay the Spire.
Yes, definitely. And one thing Damon asked, like, what's your favorite starting bonus? I'm impatient about the beginning of the game and love... In Slay the Spire, you can do like...
For Slay, yeah.
Yeah, you can have start 3 enemies, the next 3 enemies each have 1 HP. He said, "I love looking for a path."
Meow's lament.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know if that's
Meow's
amazing.
the name
Yeah,
of
that's
the
what
whale.
Yeah.
Meow's the name of the whale that starts your game, and Meow's lament is that.
Yeah, and it looks like
power-up.
a little bucket of fish.
Yeah, it's so good.
And Damon said he always tries to make a path where you get to an elite with 1 HP.
Yeah.
Which when I discovered that, I cracked that. But do you? Yeah, I guess I feel like skipping antes can be an antidote for that, but a lot of times I just like hate those first those first like 8 hands and the first couple of antes. I thought were like so. I would just restart my run all the time because I didn't get it on my first hand. Like, oh, I didn't get full house or 4 of a kind. So, I want my full hand bonus, so I'm going to restart.
I do that sometimes, which, by the way, I never do in Slay, which is another thing
right.
of like the caring, not caring is sort of like, I really think it's due to pacing. Like Slay the Spire, I don't actually know how many, nodes you hit per floor. Is that like sort of, but I feel like it's at least, double digits at least.
I think it's 16.
So that's so many more opportunities to modify your deck, to add or subtract cards, to the power creep is like stretched. So like you don't need to be super powerful by your 9th fight. You can just sort of get by with like 1 or 2 extra cards in your deck and be like, yeah, I'm fine. I can be more patient. I can take my time. But yeah, I do agree. In Balatro, it's all just like condensed. So it's just like, oh, well, I didn't hit like, I didn't get 300 points on my small blind, so I'm not getting the bonus, like annoying new run, or whatever it is, like stupid, But
I think part of that is art, though. Like, I think part of it is like the design of the vibe of the game.
Yeah, let's talk about the art. Yeah.
Because like in Slay the Spire, like it feels like someone's like craft project stylistically in like a sort of adorable and also sort of negative way. Like it feels like a collage to me. And Balatro definitely feels kind of sleazy. Like I think on purpose, but like the music and like all of the like kind of like wiggly psychedelic pixelated background, and it's just like I don't think you're supposed to care about it very much.
Yeah, I mean the designer doesn't care. He was saying on that aforementioned eggplant episode how like he found it weird that when people started playing the game, they were starting to like do the math of what their hand is going to equal before playing it. And he was like, I just play. He's like,
oh my God, I would never do that.
You just play it on vibes. I instantly did that, which is actually a complaint I have because early game, I thought that was like really fun to be like, oh, this, like times 4, blah. And then be like, oh, yes, I have lethal in like sort of a Hearthstone way. But mid-late game, you can't even add it up.
Right.
There's too many numbers. There's too many like random multipliers. It's not even like fathomable to add it up. But yeah, on the art, I mean, Cutler said, can you talk a little bit about the art direction of both games? Why do you think they work? Why does their style fit the games themselves? What could they do better or different? I mean, yeah, Slay's art is just pretty bad, right?
Yeah. It's kind of an ugly game, sadly. But like every once in a while, there's this like real gem of like one enemy design. You're like, wow, that looks really cool.
Yeah.
Or like one of the cards looks really cool.
Yeah, I think the card art's fine, and like, yeah, some of the enemies are notably cool, but like playing a game like Balatro and then going back to Slay, it like almost made me realize like how flat and like shitty the design is. Like the level that you're like the backdrops of the levels
backdrops are the worst.
So bad. Like the characters like don't attack when you attack. Like how easy would it be for like Ironclad to swing his sword, when you attack or something like that? It's just like I don't know. I hope for Slay the Spire 2 they up the way it looks, because it could be cool with just some simple stuff, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
I was trying to think like what is like people are like, what's wrong with Slay the Spire? What would you do? Like, what do you think they should improve upon?
Yeah.
And like I have some thoughts about mechanics and stuff like that, which I don't even know if that's correct, but yeah, the art is like just obviously
It's weak.
is just the easy answer because it's so bad. I do think the Watchers, all the Watchers cards look good in my opinion. Like everything about her deck is exciting to me.
She has better sounds too.
Yes.
I'll say.
Yeah, I was also going to say the sound design is terrible. It's like it's really hollow. Everything's like tinny sounding, or like you're hitting a cardboard box. It's just
Yeah.
it's a very unpleasant game to play.
Yeah.
Like,
And
yeah,
yet,
aesthetically.
And yet I have more hours in this game than any other game in my life, I think, other than Counter-Strike. I mean, it's funny you say that because I in my research I saw that Slay has a board game, which sounds great, and it's co-op, and I really want to check that out. But after learning that, I was like, the digital game sort of seems like the board game came first. Like, this is what they would make if the board game existed first and someone made a digital version of the board game.
Right.
It would be like really shitty sounds, but like it's a good game though, you know?
Wow.
But
Yeah.
Balatro art, what do you guys think about that?
I mean, go ahead.
No.
It's all really unified, which I think is awesome. Like, I think that the entire aesthetic, like sonically and visually and like play style, like the whole thing really makes sense and feels intentional. I don't know if it is, but
yeah, he definitely went for something. I don't know if I like it, but it's
How
it feels like
quickly
you're
did you
staring.
guys turn off CRT?
I actually still have it on.
Oh shit, rare.
But also because I'm not a normal gamer. I'm just like a play. I don't mess with settings. Teddy came down and was like, did you know you could do this, this, and this? I was like, oh.
It took me a while to find that out and to find out that you could turn up the game speed, which I think would have made my early game playing so much better. Yeah, I like really struggled early on. I was like, this sucks and is brutal. Like, it doesn't look very good. The music is bad. And like, I get what they're doing. Like, it feels like I'm staring into a like old like airport in Las Vegas, like gambling terminal. Like, they did that, but I don't like it. Like, I don't want to be doing
there.
this.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm interested to hear more about your intro to the game, Teddy, because I was like sort of the opposite. I mean, all of my initial thoughts were just like, wow, this game is sick. Like, wow, I can't wait to play more cards and make the number go up. I mean, how satisfying is make number go up? I mean, that we're such apes. Like, I just, as soon as I saw that, I was just like, oh my God, fucking, you know, you get the fire when you get like a really big combo. Like, those things just worked on me. And it felt sort of, I actually like turned the game speed up after I got like sort of good. And then I actually turned it back down because like seeing like the suspense of like adding everything up is sort of like the most fun part to me. I mean, he kind of mentioned that in the eggplant episode of like, he thinks the most fun part, and I actually do agree, is like you build your Rube Goldberg machine, you set up all your dominoes, sort of like a TFT sort of way, and then you just like hit play. And you just see like, I think this is going to do like a ton of fucking damage. And you just press play and it all adds up. And you're like, yes, you know, I did it. But yeah, Teddy, what was so bad at first?
Well, yeah, just the things I was saying, just about like the I think the stress of being like, am I going to be able to win? Like if I was dominating, then it was cool, like what you're saying. But I think when I didn't know, just like sitting there watching everything like wasn't very enjoyable. And I guess I like don't. Do you want to talk about like it being a gambling game or not? Because like,
yeah, sure.
I feel like that might be part of it.
That was Nolan's question. Do you think Balatro is a gambling game?
Yeah, right. And he like, because it got banned on some
marketplace. It also like when it was in, you know, early access or whatever on Steam, it got changed from like a, 3 years old and over game to like 18 plus immediately because of like gambling imagery. But I don't think it's a gambling game. What part of it is a gambling game? You don't gamble.
So I have a good friend who's a lawyer, and he's represents big companies, and he was representing.
I gotta know this guy.
He was representing this. Yeah, he's total lawyer scum, and he was representing this company who makes a game on the App Store that's a casino game where you can like play roulette and blackjack and whatever, and you pay money to buy chips, and you can win as many chips as you want, but you can't take them out. So you can
it's just a scam.
So you can gamble with your chips and win more chips, but if you ever go zero and you want more, you have to pay more money. And they got sued by like California for like, the gaming commission or whatever for being like, this is an illegal gambling game. And he's like, his case was like, listen, this is not gambling. This is just a bad game.
Yeah.
But people were spending tons of money on it.
Yeah.
And
I agree that's not a gambling game for the record.
Right. It's not. It's not a gambling game, right? But people were still spending a ton of money on it. And I was wondering, like, is this, like, are people gambling for the money, or are they gambling because the number goes up and the lights go off? Right? Like, because they win.
Yeah. Right.
And
well, let me put it to you another way. We were talking earlier about restarting runs, right? Like that says something about the stakes, right? And there's no way if you were gambling actual money, would you just be like, actually, fuck my money, I'm just going to start a new one, right? Like you'd be like, I need to desperately, this is literally life or death. Like I need to like make my fucking mortgage payment. I'm playing this out no matter how bad the start of my run is, right? That's a difference. Like the risk of like losing money. I think the addicting part, and we should talk about like everyone's asking, is it too addicting or not? I think maybe the addicting part is something to do with just number go up and like that feeling of like I'm really strong that every game kind of has. But yeah, I think what's at stake definitely matters to me, whether it's a gambling game or not.
Because so it's like Slay the Spire isn't really addictive to me, or in that way. Like, and I think part of it is because sort of how well you're going to be doing. You like have a pretty good idea. And one thing that I struggle with about Balatro is I hate that suspense of being like, oh, did I fuck this up? Like, should I have done this differently? Versus like Slay the Spire, I'm like constantly like, oh, I'm taking a little bit too much damage every fight. I need more block. I'm doing like, versus like, oh, I have this, suddenly you have this boss coming up and you're like, oh, fuck. Like, I fucked this up. Like,
my whole strategy is wrong.
Yeah.
Like, I'm never going to beat this thing. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I just think overall, Slay is just a much more complete, better game. And like a lot of what we're sort of talking about is just, I mean, like you can win if you're good enough at Slay. You can win no matter how bad the start of your game is, right? Like I didn't get offered any power cards I want. I didn't get offered this. You could still win, and you can make strategic choices of like, actually, I'm a little too weak to fight an elite now. I'm gonna go this direction in the dungeon instead of that direction in the dungeon, right? Like, and you can sort of like predict what's going to happen a little bit more and control what's going to happen a little bit more. Whereas, yeah, Balatro, you just don't really have that option, right? Like, so it's just like, if you didn't get a nice multiplier, I'm sure there's players who are incredibly good and win very regularly. But I think that like, if you were to put a win percentage on the best players in Slay versus the best players in Balatro, I assume Slay would be much higher because of all those reasons.
There are more controllable variables in general. I feel like Balatro, even just like the hands you draw, you could just get super unlucky because there's so many cards.
Right. Yeah, and all games have a mix of luck and skill. I just think Balatro is a little bit more towards the luck side, and Slay is a little bit more towards the skill side. Maybe it just has more depth. Maybe that's all the differences between the two. But yeah.
So if Balatro doesn't, if it's harder to win, or maybe that's the wrong way to phrase it.
I think it's harder to be consistent.
Yeah, and I think the problem with to be consistent, you have to go through a ton of cards, and that's one thing I don't love about the game. Is
what do you mean?
Is you have to. You're drawing odds a bunch of times. You're discarding a bunch, you're playing a bunch of hands. And for me, just running through a 52 card deck, churning through cards to get good hands that you can play high value is not that exciting to me. I think what's cool about Slay the Spire and is especially is you're streamlining your deck in a really coherent way. By the mid game, every single card that you have, what you need to get rid of, what you're looking for based on what you have, and it still can change based on your boss, whatever your boss trinket. But there's something about I feel like Balatro is actually more strategic because there's so many different things you can do and so many odds you can calculate. But that actually for most casual players means there's a lot of noise and you don't really have a good grasp of what's going on in your deck.
That does hit me all the time. I think I'm decent at the game, but there's a lot of times where I'm just too lazy to be am I more likely to draw an ace or more likely to draw a diamond here? There is a right answer, but I'm not going to do it. I'm just going to discard. But I think that's also part of the vibes play that, designer intended, which is just just fucking go for it. And if it doesn't work, you just go make another run and maybe don't make the same mistake. Only after the 10th punch, you'll see the first, and only after the 20th punch, you'll block it. Right. There's an old proverb or something.
Did you ever play Meteor Fall?
I've played it. Yeah, I've played it a decent amount. Yeah.
So something I love about Meteor Fall that neither one of these deck builders allows me to do is get rid of enough cards.
Oh, yeah.
And I think we talked a little bit about this earlier, but my least favorite thing about Slay the Spire is how difficult it can be to get rid of cards. And similarly, Balatro, I love destroying cards, but you just have so many of them. It's really hard to streamline. And I haven't yet found a way to make good use of the turn more of your deck to this one suit or destroy a card every time this thing happens in a way that feels satisfying and feels like I've streamlined my deck.
I think what that might be is just recognition from the game designers that it's so powerful.
Right.
I think it's just literally OP if you could just easily optimize your deck. Because even in Balatro where you have 52 cards, when I get rid of 2 2s and have 25 spades and less of the other, it's fucking easy. I'm making a flush every single hand. I'm getting 4 of a kind regularly. When you get the spectral card that's all these cards turn into a random rank and they're all kings or something, I'm just fucking flying on that run, I think that's really what it is. I think just getting rid of cards is just so powerful in this kind of game.
Yeah.
What are some builds, what's your favorite build to do in Balatro? Or has there been one that you were really excited about? Maybe I feel the most reliable to win is very different than cool.
The funny thing is and maybe this says a lot about the game, but also I've played so much more Slay than this game, but I don't know if I have a favorite. I mean, both games, I think the strength of a roguelike deck builder, which is kind of a newish kind of game, right? Like you were saying, is most card games, it's what's the best card? What's the best class? What are the most powerful cards? What's the best relic? What's the best deck? I'm going to go for that every time, right? But I think both of these games, to maybe varying degrees, is it's actually optimal to be as open and flexible as possible, Because if you go all in too early, you might just get countered by one specific type of enemy or one specific type of boss. That exists in both games. And so I think that
100% my problem in Slay the Spire is I have an idea going into a run what I want to do.
Yeah,
that fucks me every time.
It's weird doing this pod because usually I'm playing a game for the first time going into Wide Flank episode, but I've been playing this game since 2019 so much. Watching Ian play, shout out to Ian at work, was the first time I've seen a newish player play in a while. And I disagreed with almost every decision he made. He would just snap pick a card, and I'm like, ooh. And he's like, what? I was like, never would have taken that. It was crazy. I was just like, wow, I'm so dialed in on and again, it's that sort of proverb I was just saying. I've just lost so many times trying to jam poison on the silent or whatever that Ian was trying to do, or I'm just you can't do that. You need this to even make it viable. And wait, just build gold and just take value before you even get there. So I think my favorite part in both games, and maybe just the genre, is that. I love just barely beating someone, and setting it up, and then things come together, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm getting strong. Now I'm starting to turn it up. That's my favorite. What about you, Mads? Do you have a favorite?
I don't think I do. I like seeing what comes my way and then trying to build off of that. I think it's one of the things I like most about roguelikes is it doesn't feel in making those decisions, you're screwing yourself over for the entire rest of the game, which is what really freaks me out about RPGs.
Yes.
I'm like, oh my God, what if I make the wrong choice? there is no wrong choice. And also that way, I end up taking stuff and finding out about things and combinations I wouldn't have before.
Definitely that too. Yeah, interesting combinations. I mean, just on that note, I was reading a Slay article with the designer, and he was saying the early versions of Slay the Spire, they didn't show what the enemy was going to do, which I don't know if we said that or not. But every battle, you see exactly what every single enemy is going to do on their next turn, which is really unique. But early versions, they didn't have that, and so the difference between playing a defensive card or an attacking card was basically just a guessing game. And they were kind of comparing it in the article to a JRPG where it doesn't really matter what the enemy is going to do. You just play your most high damage spell and you don't really care, and you'll probably kill them. No one uses defend in that kind of game. But also part of that is an RPG isn't life or death usually, right? You can escape, or you get another try, or only one character in your group dies, but you don't lose. But in these games, you just straight up lose. You have to start over again. So eventually adding the enemy intent, I think, was just such a good decision for all of those reasons.
Right. I know they didn't used to have it. I don't understand how you could play the game.
It
the idea of
awful.
adding block to your hand.
It would just be a completely different game.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. I guess the cards would be different and stuff, but the idea of playing a card am I gonna? I feel I would just stack block every time. I'd be so scared, or
scared,
or just take a bunch of damage every time. Be fuck.
Do you guys ever take the relic where it's you get an extra energy, but you cannot see enemy intents?
I see that, and
never.
I'm absolutely no.
Oh my God, it's one of the best relics in the game. Was when you play enough, you do basically know what the enemies are going to do every time. There's almost never where you just oh, I just took lethal damage. I didn't think they could possibly do that, And so that's what the game used to be, right?
Right.
He was saying in the same article, the playtesters were so hardcore at that point in their little Discord playtest community that they actually hated the enemy intent. They're you're removing skill from the game. But obviously for a new player, that's not skill. It's just stupid game knowledge that you couldn't possibly know or play around.
Right. Well, and it's adding a different kind of strategy too.
Yeah.
I never take that relic because I feel I get energy in other ways.
in life and in the game.
Yeah.
Do you have favorite relics? I think Svenny was wondering what our
Oh my god, it's so hard. I don't know. Do you guys have any
Madeline
good
does.
answers for these? Favorite, least favorite builds, favorite trinket, optimum deck size? I'm just like, I read those.
Optimum deck size is smaller.
Small. Yeah, small.
Well, so I have answers for all these. So my
Okay, go
favorite
ahead.
build is Blasphemy build for the Watcher,
Okay.
where you die next turn. I think that's so fucking awesome.
I honestly, I didn't even know that was the thing. Honestly, I barely played Watcher.
Oh yeah, so you enter Divinity stance,
Yeah.
Which is 3x.
3x
3x
damage,
damage,
and then
yeah.
if you will die if you don't kill them that turn. And
That rules.
yeah, it's really fun. It's kind of Balatro-esque, honestly.
Yeah.
And then I think my favorite relic, or the most reliable relic, is probably the flute that you can't use get potions anymore.
Oh wow, that's it. But potions are so useful. I love potions, so I don't take that often.
Wow, oh, that's amazing. I love how different we play this game.
Yeah.
I love the relics where like the horn cleat or like the wheel, like where you just automatically get block.
Oh yeah.
I love not having to think
the
about
brick or whatever.
defense at all. Yeah.
Oh, someone's home.
But even more than that, your favorite relic is the starfish.
What's that one do again?
The elites drop 2.
Oh yeah,
that one?
at least drop 2 relics. Yeah, because I didn't remember that it was the starfish. I love relics. I love trinkets. Usually when I'm playing, like the whole top of the screen is just covered in little tiny relics, and I have to remember what everything is
You
doing.
texted us that, right? You were like,
Yeah.
I realized why I'm bad at these games is because you love loot too much. I mean, my response was like, it's fun to do bad things, right? Like it's fun to be greedy and be dangerous and be risky in video games. So like I do it too all the time, and I just die. But like you make that the one time you get through it, and it's just fucking so sick. You get that like ultimate thrill and high of just like, I'm actually an unkillable force right now.
That's one thing
I love the shuriken too, the one where you gain strength every turn.
So
love
sick.
that one. Also, it looks good.
I like the shuriken and the kunai combo. You really get that. Play 3 attacks, you get dexterity and strength. Oh, forget about it. Forget about it.
So I think one of the problems with Balatro is not knowing the information and not knowing how good your hand's going to be. Is farming is really stressful. Like farming money or farming cards that like get better.
Wait, so sorry, what do you mean?
So like if it's like, okay, if you played face cards give you $2.
Yeah.
Right? You're rather than winning outright, you're trying to get some face cards discarded. And then you like, because of that, you're really on the edge, or you're holding like a 3 of a kind of like 9s and you have 5 jokers and you're like, is this going to win? I think it is. Yeah, I think it's going to win. I'm going to play 7 more hands because I'm just going to farm some money. And then you lose by 18 chips. And you're like, fuck this game. Like fuck this.
The numbers, that's what I was saying earlier, right? I mean, I think that the actual size of the numbers is something that I really don't like about Balatro as much as I like number going up. It's like in Slay, it's so easy to calculate your damage. And obviously what the enemy's damage is just a flat number. It just shows you exactly what their damage is. So it's very easy to be like, okay, I'll block this turn. I have 3 strikes in my deck and I'm drawing 5 cards. Like I'm very likely to kill them next turn. So I'll just block this turn or whatever. But yeah, like you don't really have that in Balatro unless you're doing hardcore calculations, which no one really wants to do when they're playing. So I get that. It feels a little bit unfair in a way.
Well, it's the mistake is catastrophic, right? So this is what it is. It's in Slay the Spire. It's like there are a few cards that help you farm, and there's techniques like, right? So it's like, okay, I can increase my max health if I use feed on this guy, but I'm going to take some damage. Yeah, and it's like, well, if I do that 5 times in a row, I'm probably going to die. Like on 5 enemies. Right. So like I'll do it here, maybe take a little damage and see, and then like, okay, maybe now I'm going to change my path to rest. and stuff. In Balatro, like if you fuck that up, you lose. And I feel like Slay, it's more about like how are you farming long term and how's that affecting your run versus Balatro. It's like, because you didn't do all the math, like, or if you did all the math, actually you could have farmed 4 more face cards in the last 3 antes, but because you were playing it safe, you didn't. And it's like, that's not cool. That's not fun. That feels bad.
Yeah. No,
Also,
it's like, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, undying in Balatro is so unceremonious. It's just like, you feel so bad. You're like, God damn it.
And you mentioned, Teddy, at the beginning, like you thought it was going to be weirder. Like the only like flavor is that Joker just like saying some annoying thing to you when you die, right? It's just like, thought you'd do better or something. And then you just like, and it's like, I don't know. Can we talk about this? Like neither game has story really, but like when you go from Slay to Balatro, you realize the difference between like world building and actual no story. Like,
right.
I don't think there's a story in Slay, and maybe I'm wrong, but when you go from that to Balatro, it's like there's not even really like a world. Like I'm playing against the wall right now. Like I'm playing against a screen. There's no like real enemies, even though there's like, there's a little bit of flavor with like the boss blind, but like you never see them and they don't do anything. You just you're playing solitaire basically against them. Versus like Slay, I mean, just the fact I think that there are enemies and they react differently to what you're doing and how you're building, I feel like gives it more of a like, I'm playing a video game right now, as opposed to like, I'm just pulling the lever on video poker, which obviously isn't what it is, but like world building wise, it kind of is.
I also think in Slay, because like there is a little bit of like way for you to interact with previous versions or future versions of yourself in a way that there's no contact in Balatro. It's like that like question mark room where you like can put a card in the wall.
Oh yeah.
For like your future self to get out later, or like the like face swapping person.
Yeah.
Like I've seen your face before, or like things like just like weird little voice lines that like you do, depending on how imaginative you're feeling, like you can create a narrative around what's going on in Slay the Spire. And Balatro, you're correct, is just like literally just playing like against a poster. Like it's just
That's exactly what I'm talking about. It's like I have this half-baked thing where I wrote down, I'm like, I will play a game that's fun to play if it lacks any story or lore. Like I'll still play that game. And I would never play a game that has like good story or lore but like sucks to play. But like then you see the difference between like that's so unspecific, and you see the difference between like what lacks story and doesn't is like the difference between these two games.
Yeah.
I agree with everything you guys are saying. Totally.
Yeah. Caw. Good voice lines like that.
Yeah. My powers were matched.
Yeah, exactly.
I like the names of the Jokers.
Yeah, they're great. They're really fun. Really great.
Yeah. One thing Cutler said was, can you talk a little bit about no, sorry. He said no, it was Nolan. What is the best enemy design? And he said, it's the correct answer is Book of Stabbing.
Great enemy.
Which I didn't realize was a book until he said that. I thought it was
it's also in one of the cards. I forget which one, but like you see it's like I can't remember what it's called, but it's one of the block cards. In it is like, it's like the Ironclad like holding a shield, the card art, and it's the book like trying to stab through the shield, which is awesome.
Yeah. I was like, wow, it's a book. Like, what a good enemy.
Yeah.
That's amazing. It's like that game has a very D&D feel to it in like a fun way. It's like, let's be really creative with our enemy designs or whatever.
There's so many great enemies. I mean, I always like playing against the giant head.
Yeah.
Just like the statue head that's just like on its side. Partially because like the design's great, but also like they present you with these like the boss modifiers in Balatro are almost just like obstacles. Like you're always playing poker hands in Balatro. And what's fun, one of the fun things I think is that you're modifying what poker hands are good or bad through the game. And that's like really interesting to play with. But you're not playing that differently. You're just kind of like, oh, this like little speed bump. Okay, like I can't play these aces. I'll play like this card instead. But in Slay, like the giant head is a great example of like it changes the way I play every single hand because of it has this debuff called slow. So I want to like dump all my like skills while still having energy for my attacks because the more cards you play before you attack, it deals more damage. Like there's more stuff like that in Slay. I think that is again like more kind of like world building and cool. Even though we said the art sucks,
it makes you feel creative too,
yes,
right? When you're like, oh, I have this great idea, rather than like, oh, I'm gonna level up my flush, and like there is still some creativity. I'm reducing the Balatro creativity a little bit, but it's like not the same as Slay the Spire. In terms of bosses, one thing I think Balatro does well is like you find out what all the bosses are pretty fast, and you can like start building for them. I feel like Slay the Spire, it's a huge time investment, and you aren't always totally clear why you lost, and like especially as like a beginning player. And I felt like I just got to the third area and fought this boss, and like I lost, and because like I needed to play more cards. Like most enemies
or
aren't
I needed
like
to
that.
do different things at the beginning of this fight, or
right, like most enemies are like, oh, every time you play a card, they get more and more block. It's like, what? Like, that seems really different from the rest of the game I've been playing. Which once you've played it, you're like, okay, I need this kind of card, this kind of card, this kind of card before if I'm going to beat it reliably.
It's definitely less clear, but I think the bosses in both games are trying to do the same thing, which is that like you cannot just jam one type of build because there's always a boss that counters you. And so you have to be flexible. And like in Slay, you get a lot more lead time to seeing the boss. So you're like, oh shit, Time Eater. Like I was going for a Shiv deck and I'm going to transition to a power deck or something, Whereas like Balatro, you get like 2 turns in the shop to be like, fuck, I can't play the whole thing I've been doing the whole time. Or maybe I'll re-roll the boss blind, which is a nice feature, I think. But yeah, it can be, both games can be really frustrating in that way. Yeah.
Can we talk about the needle?
Yeah, you go ahead. You hate the needle.
I hate the needle. Okay, the needle, the way you beat the needle is you have to have one hand that beats the boss.
Yeah.
And to me, like, that's the whole fucking game. The whole fucking game is like, can you make an OP hand? Like, and or it shouldn't be, or it should be like, can you be creative? Like, can you get like a 3 of a kind and then a two pair and then a flush? And like that to me is interesting. Like, okay, you can't use one of these things, or you have to kind of change it up a little bit. But now to be like, oh, you have to play one hand that gets a ton of chips. Like, if you can do that, you can win every single time, right? You will never, if you can reliably win in one hand, you're just going to always do that. And I just feel like it's like an unnecessary power check.
What do you think about it, Mads?
it just feels like it's like the final boss, but sometimes it's not the final boss.
Yeah, it could appear on any ante, I think.
Right.
I mean, I think it's totally fine. I don't know. I mean, it requires,
the earlier it appears, the better.
Yeah, it requires less points sometimes than even the big blind.
Oh, it does.
Yeah, it's not always like some astronomically high number. And if it is, that means it's late into the game, and you should have multipliers. I do think it's like a fair skill check. And like, again, you get warning, it's coming, because you can see ahead once you get to the small blind. But I mean, I just found ways to play around it, like, and not dissimilar to some bosses in Slay. Like, I don't really have one in mind, but there's definitely times in Slay where I've thought I'm really powerful, and then I come against the night guy, the night boss.
Yeah.
And I just can't kill him fast enough. And then he starts doing like 40 times 2, and I'm just like, I missed my window to kill him. I don't have enough damage. Like, to me, it's not that dissimilar. It's like, if I'm not that strong in Balatro, I'll buy a couple consumables and I'll save it for that fight and be like, okay, I'm going to make these 2 cards do more molt and these 2 cards do more chips, and just burst the needle down on this one good hand or something. And to me, it's like similar. It's like I'll save 2 potions,
yeah,
and just because I know I need to like be stronger than my deck is to beat this one type of boss.
It's funny to hear you talk about the tarot cards as consumables.
Yeah,
because they absolutely are.
Yeah.
But I'm like,
yeah,
like it's a saltine or something.
Yeah, yummy.
I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of like a power check because that's not what I like about these games. But I think I am in the minority in that department. I just like to like try stuff out and see if I can make it go more than optimize, which I think.
Yeah. I mean, it's not that I'm a huge fan of them. It's more just like, I think that's like what the game genre is.
Right.
Because otherwise you would just
you
would just win every time. Right? Like if you could just
the bosses are too hard. This game sucks.
If you could just jam one thing every time and there was no counters to like a Shiv deck or a power deck or something, then you would just win every time and be like, well, this is just OP. But like this is a good way of being like, you can't do that. You need to prepare for different types of things. It's like, it's the same as like, there was someone in Discord complaining that like one of the bosses like banned spades or something, and they were going for a flush deck, and it's like, well, yeah, that's that's why it exists. So you can't just win every single time you go for a flush deck.
Yeah, I guess I agree with everything you're saying. You
just hate it.
No, to me that one seems different in a weirder way.
Okay.
Like you have to play. You have to get a really high score in one hand. It's just like, I wish I could do that every time. That sounds fucking awesome. Like, the one I wanted to say, like, the one really fun deck I had that I thought was really interesting was I did a Vagabond Joker and was went into debt.
What's that one?
That's the one where every time you play a hand with less than $3, you get a tarot card.
Yes. Awesome.
And so I was at like negative $15 the entire game.
God.
And was just getting literally my entire deck was modified.
That's so sick.
And it was so fun. I was like, this is absurd. I love this.
Yeah, I mean that goes hand in hand with like one of my complaints from earlier about like how like I feel like I don't have time, especially as the stakes go up. I'm like, I want to experiment. Like I want to take this like kind of bad Joker and see if I can make it good enough. But I'm just going to die in 2 turns if I do.
Right.
And like, and that sucks. Like I actually like was going as high in the stakes as I possibly could, like same as Ascensions and Slay. And I found that like actually lowering the game speed and playing on the normal stake is more fun. And one thing that I think Balatro does right in that sense is like it's actually endless. You don't beat like a final boss and then your run is done. Where like sometimes in Slay, and I'm sure this has happened to you guys too, is like you're just so fucking powerful. I'm like, no, bring on the next boss because I can one shot anyone right now. And I wish it tripled their health and made them do, like the same way Balatro does, because that's actually more fun to me than like making the stakes harder and being like, well, I'm just re-rolling for this one thing. And if I don't get it, I'm going to start a new run because this isn't strong enough.
Right. That's a good point.
Yeah, I like the experimentation a lot more.
Yeah, I like that too.
Yeah, like the banana is so strong. You get to a late stake and you're just like, I don't have anything that's like 15x. It's like I'm going to lose the next ante. No shot, Yeah, interesting.
Have you beaten Slay the Spire like on with the key? I realized before we did the episode, I was like, oh wait, I haven't. I meant to actually beat the game with like the.
You've never beaten the game?
Well, like with the three
the keys.
the 3 gems. No, I've never done that. I'm like on Ascension 10. I'm on Ascension 10, but I've never done
That's so funny. Every time I play, I go for the 3 keys and beat the game. Like I go. So basically, for those who don't know what we're talking about, there's 3 acts. Each act has a boss, but if you beat the game with the first 3 characters, you unlock these keys, which make your run even harder. Basically, if you want to get the keys or not. And if you get all 3 keys and beat Act 3, then you unlock Act 4, and it's a way harder boss. It's basically a campfire, then a shop, then like a mini boss that's pretty hard, and a hard final boss. Yeah, you should check it out.
A whole
it's great.
other act.
Yeah,
Wow.
that's what it does when you get the keys.
Wow.
I can't believe you've never fought the corrupt heart, dude. That's like the game.
Wait, so do you? Okay, can I do it on the normal heat, like the normal Ascension?
Yeah.
Yeah,
You can
yeah.
do it. You
Once
just need a,
once you've beaten it once.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So basically, you get offered keys. Basically, there's a red key, a blue key, and a green key.
Sapphire.
Yep. Oh, sorry. And the keys are offered. The keys are offered at specific points when you would normally do something else. So it's like a modifier to a run. Basically, it makes it harder because you're like, oh, I don't take this treasure chest because I get this key, or I don't, rest or upgrade a card. I have to get this key, and yada yada yada. But yeah, it's fun. It's really fun.
Yeah.
Do you guys ever play the dailies? I think that was also a Svenny question.
No, never.
I don't.
I actually tried it in anticipation of the episode. It's really cool. It's actually great. I mean, it's just... I haven't played any mods in Slay either, but they're reading about it and seeing some stuff. I joined their Discord to see what was going on, the Slay the Spire Discord. There's a huge modding community. They're making new characters, new bosses, new cards, Sailor Moon characters, Simpsons characters. They're going doing everything, and it's it looks fucking sick.
Wow.
I mean,
I'm so excited.
Yeah, it's got such a lively community that it made me psyched to check it out in the future. And one of the guys on the Discord, I said noob question, but how do I play the mods? And he was basically telling me how. And then he said the Downfall Packmaster and Replay the Spire are great standalone mods I'd recommend you try. And then Spire with Friends and Together Inspire for multiplayer options. So they made multiplayer versions of the game, just modded. Just so fucking cool.
Wow. I love that.
So we got to try that as a follow-up to the episode. But yeah, I don't know what else. What else is there?
I wanted to ask what you think about farming in Slay the Spire. Do you usually do it? Do you think it's an interesting mechanic?
What do you mean farming?
Farming, like you get the card that if you kill an enemy with it, you get gold. You increase your max health by playing this card. Wish is a watcher card.
I usually don't take them. And if I do, it's my deck is really weak and it's actually just a good attack card. You know what I mean? Feed, right? Is the one, it's the Ironclad one. It's 10 or 11 damage. I usually don't take it, or if I do, I just use it like an attack. It's just not reliable enough to have that as your final blow, I think. And a lot of these games is just about consistency and reliability. I mean, the question about what's the optimum deck size, this sort of, I feel like the answer to this question is what games have you played before Slay the Spire? And that will inform you, because I was a Hearthstone player, and so it's 30 card deck. So I know that 30 card deck is relatively consistent. And anything less feels really consistent to me. I'm always getting the cards I want. And anything more, I'm I might just never get my cards that I need for this combo or whatever. But filling my cards with I need it this turn, or I'm not getting the value of the card. I just feel I'll never hit it.
Yeah. I also, I do sometimes do feed, or sometimes what's the dagger one? Where it adds damage every time.
Oh,
that one's so sick. I love that.
I like the dagger. But there's something about how many opportunities there are to add cards to your deck in Slay the Spire, and that proportionally how few opportunities there are to remove cards.
Yes.
That it really disincentivizes trying out cards like that, because you're like, if this doesn't work the way I think it's going to, I'm not going to be able to get rid of it.
Right. You can take something in like Act 1 and then Act 2 is like, this is the worst card in my deck. Why would I ever have this? Yeah, it's true.
Right.
Yeah. Damn. Well, do you take them, Teddy? You like those cards?
I like the dagger and I like feed, but I've always wanted to take the greed one or whatever, where you like, it's like usually only in the shop. It's like a colorless card, I think. And if you kill an enemy with it, you get like 30 gold.
Oh, I actually take that one sometimes. Hand of greed or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, it's just situational, right? Like, feed is a 1 mana 10 damage card. It's like barely better than an upgraded attack, but it's okay.
Yeah.
But like
early game particularly.
Yeah, early game, the hand of God or hand of greed, whatever it's called, is like 2 mana, deal 20. Like, you can kill like most enemies with just that card. So like it feels really reliable because it's not, I don't need to draw it at a certain point. It's whenever I draw it, kill something and gain 20 gold, you know? Which I do think is more useful. But when I used to play a lot of defects character, I would sometimes take the one that was like, that increases block every time you use it. You know, it starts as 1 mana, 1 block. And yeah, that card can come in handy.
Yeah, so I think part of my problem is like, I love having like a super overpowered character, and I'll risk losing to have that happen. So I will do things like this.
Yeah.
Or like, okay, I'm like, wow, I really like, I'll take 10 damage this round if it means I can get two max HP or whatever.
Yeah.
And this is like why I kept losing. And I probably played like 200 antes before I won my first Balatro. But I definitely could have won before that. But it was always because I was farming or doing something greedy. And I love it. So I do it all the time in Slay the Spire.
It's fucking really, like I said, it's fun to do bad things. It's
really
fun to be fucking greedy, loot whore, loot
I
goblin.
should really rest, but actually I'm going to upgrade this.
Yeah, I'm on 3 HP, but I want this body slam to be 0 mana, so it doesn't matter. Yeah, Johnny D's question was, I think you were referencing this before, Teddy. He said, I'm interested in what you think Slay the Spire gets wrong and could maybe improve on in the sequel. I don't play many deck builders, but I love Spire, as I think the balance makes it so replayable, but it can't be perfect. And Nolan was also asking, like, what do we want to see from Slay the Spire 2, which is, it's exciting that they just announced that. Either of you want to go?
I think make it look better.
Better art.
That's the low hanging fruit, right? It just looks like shit. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that I'm curious why you love Watcher, Teddy, so much, but I was like reading another article about Slay, and I don't know. I've always not liked Watcher after playing it a few times. I just felt like, oh my God, it's too powerful. It was like too OP. And then I read an article that was like, I think it said Twitch streamers or like popular Slay the Spire streamers have double the win rate on the Watcher than other characters. And I was like, okay, yeah. So I'm not just making it up. It's just OP. So I think like the balance on the first 3, I think is like impeccable, and it's really fair and really fun. And like those decisions can like make or break a run, and it's super sick. And Watcher's just too strong. So I hope they balance it well.
Yeah, I like to win, so I like playing the Watcher.
Fair.
No, I love the like intensity of like going into Wrath or something, or like going into Divinity and die next turn. And I love just like, doing a ton of damage.
Making those kinds of decisions that feel very high consequence, I think, are fun with Watcher.
Yeah.
The runs are too long, I think.
In Slay, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're a little too long.
That's hard for me to say if I want that to actually be shorter, because that sort of this whole episode we've been saying like, yeah, but you can't do that in Balatro because it's too short, you know? So I don't know.
So the problem with Balatro, it feels like those rounds, if you're not farming, like you're just playing for a shop, right? You're just playing for a shop, and that sucks. Right? You're just like, I just have to, like, I know I'm going to win this this blind, and I'm just playing so I can get to the shop. And I think like, I don't know, I think even those like little, you can do more interesting things, even with like a few less enemies. Like whether that's farming for health or like maybe condensing a little bit, but maybe you're right. Maybe
No, I mean, this all for me at least goes back to what we were saying before, where the numbers are like insurmountable. Like I can't do that easily in my head, which is a design decision. But like there are jokers in Balatro where it's like, turn all your face cards into gold, right? And then you want as many of those in your hand when you end the blind, so then you cash as much gold as possible. But not knowing when I'm gonna just end the blind, not knowing that this full house of like 2s and 5s is gonna end the blind, and then I just am like, oh fuck, I didn't play all those face cards to turn them into gold, and like I fucked up the optimization is very annoying, and leads to me being experimental and creative less. Whereas in Slay, again, you know always, oh, I have exact lethal here, so I'm gonna just block and play this power card that heals me at the end of the turn, or like wait till I draw that, or wait till I draw feed, or wait till I draw any of these cards that we've been talking about. And it's much more like I'm in control of what happens, even though you are in Balatro. It just feels out of control because you're just like, oh shit, I just hit 15,000 damage without knowing that was gonna happen. Like, I could have farmed way more gold. I could have, like, if I was a better player, I would have played this fight completely differently. But I accidentally won too early, which is just like a weird thing that doesn't make sense. Do you guys think this game's too addictive, or games like this are too addictive? Was Hayden's question.
It is a little too addictive. There were times where it's like there were times where I uninstalled the game.
Oh my god!
Yeah, I was like, I need to take a break from this.
Wow.
Like, yeah.
Teddy's a quick uninstaller though.
Okay. Snap uninstall.
Yeah.
I'm a League of Legends player.
Yeah, he's been through it all. It's just funny to use the word addictive to me in the first place, right? I mean, like, heroin's addictive. Like, is Balatro addictive? Like, it's fun.
I mean, I think there are times I was like, I shouldn't play this anymore, but I'm going to.
Okay. Yeah, I guess that means it's addictive. Yeah.
Why did you feel like you shouldn't?
Because like I just hated what I just did, and I don't want to do it again. Like that wasn't fun, and I don't want to do this again because I know it's going to happen again. Something stupid is going to happen again. And then it would, and I'd be so mad at myself. And then I uninstalled it or something. Because I'm like, that's the only way I can like give myself a little bit of a barrier to play this game again.
Wow.
That's problematic. I'm sorry it was like that for you. But at least you're not like, I lost my mortgage because of Balatro, and I like didn't pick my kid up from school because of fucking Balatro. Like, to me, it's a little bit different. But yeah, it's just a fun game, and it's really fast. I mean, I've been saying all episode is it's like a little too fast, and I don't like that as much, but that is part of the replayability, right? It's like,
totally.
One more, because it's going to take 3 minutes, and like I just want to get in and see what happens.
Right. Well, right. I think what you're getting at is like it's not. If you're enjoying yourself, like, and I want to keep enjoying myself,
and it's not bad for you.
Yeah.
Right. Everything fun is addictive, if that's our definition of addictive, because it's fun to do fun stuff. Have you guys played Dominion or Ascension or anything like that? Svenny was asking me about the paper deck builders. I've never played those games, but I really want to check them out.
I have played Dominion. There's like an online version of it that I've played. And I've only played it like a couple times with like very casual board game friends. So it wasn't a very intense experience, but I did enjoy it.
Yeah, I think I would love to check that out. I would love to try different deck builders and see what they do differently. And that's kind of what intrigued me about the dailies. And maybe that's my big takeaway from like preparing for this episode is like, I think I'm going to start playing Slay dailies, because it's like, even the act of scoring points is something I've literally had never thought of in my life of playing Slay the Spire for 5 years. And then you play a daily and you get points, and that's the end of the run. And you see there's like a leaderboard of points, and I'm like, wait, how do you even get points? Like, it's like a whole new way of playing. It's like a new game mode. You know, I'm like, oh, if you have to like perfect enemies, gets you more points. Perfecting a boss gets you even more points. You know, stuff like that. Where I'm like, I never try and do that. I just try and win.
Right.
So it's kind of interesting. I think it's a cool way to play.
Yeah, the Spelunky daily runs, which I did like religiously for like
what were those about? Yeah,
it was basically just like you play one run a day and that's it. But the leaderboard was how much gold you collected. And I just never did that because it was like, I was like, I don't want to spend all my time collecting all this fucking gold.
Yeah.
Like,
that's funny. It's not just how far you got. Well, because it seems logical.
It is, but eventually, like 100 people will beat the game that run.
Okay.
That day, and so they rank those people based on gold found. But it's like, what I like about the daily, and I don't know if Slay is like this. It's you just play once, right?
Oh, okay.
And that's what I like about, and maybe that solves this addiction problem. It solves some of this other stuff, right? It's just, I'm sitting down for one session and I'm going to be careful and methodical and really, and if I lose whatever, I'll pick it up tomorrow. Like, it's not like I'm going to grind a bunch out or anything.
Yeah.
And yeah, I love, Doug would like come in the room and be like, oh, you're going to do the Spelunky daily? I want to watch. Like,
yeah, that's cool. I think Slay, you can replay it, but I don't remember. I mean, for some reason, Temple Run just came to mind. Do you guys remember that mobile game? I would get on such long, intense runs that it was basically the equivalent of a daily. Like, my entire commute to work, and then I would get off the train and I'm still going. I was like, I'm not playing that again. It's like you just have your one huge run and then you're done for the day. It's kind of like a fun vibe. But yeah, anything that makes the rules slightly different and the way you play slightly different, I think is like the strength of the genre. Like, it's almost like that drinking game, like Kings or whatever. It's like
New
matter, yeah, exactly. Like, I'm always, no matter what in Balatro, no matter what jokers you have or how you modded the deck, you're still playing poker hands, no matter what. But like, it gets to a point where like you might be playing like 3 cards at a time, and they're like bad low cards for whatever reason, whatever combination of jokers you have, and that's cool. But like, I just think in Slay, it's a lot more creative and a lot more time to sort of experiment and change your deck. Versus Balatro, it's just like, yeah, I think the key for me is like playing the equivalent of a daily. Like, I'm going to play on easy, play like one run on normal game speed, and just try and like get to ante 12, as opposed to like trying to beat this high stake deck or something.
Right.
I'm excited to check out the Slay the Spire dailies.
Yeah. I played the one today. I beat it. It's not like hard, but I didn't get that high a score. And so that's why I was like, at first I was like, this is really easy. And then I saw everyone's scores were 4 times mine. I was like, oh shit, like I suck. Like, you have to do all this other stuff. So yeah, it's kind of fun. Maybe everyone can post their scores.
In Slay the Spire, Madeline, and maybe would you get any starting bonuses? And I was curious what Madeline you do, what kind of starting bonus you pick when you do a Slay the Spire run.
It depends. Sometimes I take the max HP one because I like a little cushion. Sometimes I take the swap out my relic for like a boss relic or something, because I don't know. I think that can really shape the beginning of your run in a fun way. And I love trinkets.
I love that one too, for the record. Like, the swap your starting relic for a boss relic. I just think, yeah, like exactly what we were just talking about. Like, that's the one where you figured out how to play your character, and then you do that, and it completely changes everything.
Yes.
You're like, oh, I'm going for the highest cost cards now all of a sudden, or like, something like that, which is awesome. I like the transforming cards or removing cards too. We talked about how powerful those two things are, right? Like transforming two strikes or removing a strike in a defend or something at the beginning feels really, really good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, just it depends on the day, you know? How am I feeling?
Yeah.
So like, it's like if I wanted to, so I forgot to mention this at the beginning, but I started like a new Slay profile. So I could, because I was like, I haven't started fresh in this game in so long, you know, and I wanted to see what it's like. And my notes are like, I feel like I'm smurfing, which is like really funny in like a single player game.
Yeah, you're smurfing
like
yourself.
like sort of feel bad for the AI because I'm just shitting on them. It's like it's so easy, and I'm not supposed to be this good yet.
Wow, that's good.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I've never felt that before, but that was an interesting thing about the balance of the game too. That the designer mentioned is like it's easier to balance this game than like a competitive Hearthstone or whatever, because like you can have OP stuff and it doesn't feel as like unfair and stupid because you're just doing it to AI as opposed to like having it done to you by another human.
Yeah, it's sort of the point, right? And like that's cool.
Yeah.
The power fantasy.
Yeah, totally. All right. Anything else, or should we wrap it up?
Yeah, that's good.
Psyched for Slay 2? I am.
Yeah.
I haven't gotten it on my phone yet because I feel like I'll start missing subway stops.
Yeah.
I think the thing that's really nice about it on the phone is like I basically play a daily, but over the course of the day. It's like anytime I'm like on the subway, I'll play like, 2 levels and I can come back to it really easily. And I don't know. I like the like dipping back in and out of it. That's been very fun.
It's funny you say that though, because that's actually a problem I have with the genre in both of these games is like, if I am in the middle of run and stop and then come back, I like can't remember what I'm building towards. Like, even though you can see your jokers and you can see your relics and I can look at my deck, I like lose the flow of like, oh yeah, this is what I'm doing. Like, it's like I'm like snowballing my build, and then I always lose it. Like sometimes I will literally just start a new run because I'm just like I can't get into that run. Yeah.
It's funny. Like so many games, I'm like, I need to take a break. I need to walk away and play. I need to sleep and play it tomorrow because I keep dying on this Bloodborne boss. And these games are the exact opposite. Like I can't stop because like I got it wired and I got it. I gotta finish.
Too addictive.
I guess it's too addictive. Yeah. And end of story. That's it. Goddamn. All right, y'all. Well, yeah. Thanks for suffering through Balatro to make this episode happen, and thanks for being on, Madeline. Thanks for being on, Teddy. It was fun.
Yeah, you bet.
Yeah.
See you next time.
See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.